We're kind of skipping a couple of Psalms this morning because, one of them we already studied back in May because it was one of the Psalms of the sons of Korah, Psalm 84. Psalm 85 and Psalm 87 we're going to talk about in the context of looking at the Psalms after that next week. So this morning what I want to focus in on is Psalm 86. And this morning's message is entitled 5 Reasons to Pray. 5 Reasons to Pray. Now you may or may not be aware of the fact that there is an ongoing battle in your life. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, there's a battle going on. Paul talks about it in the context of it's a battle between the flesh and the spirit. He says it this way in Galatians 5:17. He says, the flesh lusts against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary to one another, so that you do not do the things that you wish. It's saying we have within us a desire, he calls it the flesh, to put ourselves on the throne, so to speak, to do what seems good for us. And then there is that part of us that is enlivened when we come to faith in Jesus Christ. It is our spirit that comes alive. That's why Jesus describes it as being born again, because this isn't just joining a club in a church or anything else. It's a radical transformation from the inside out. And so that spirit that comes alive wants to serve God. But you know what happens is after coming to faith in Jesus Christ, there's a battle because that one part of me goes, well, I just want to do this because that's what's good for me and comfortable for me and makes me feel good. And the other part of me says, oh, no, I want to serve God even if that means being uncomfortable or doing something that isn't all that good for me. And so there's this wrestling back and forth that goes on. And this carries over, I believe, into the aspect of prayer. Because we get two different mindsets about prayer. And we start forgetting who God is. And we begin to look at things from an entirely different focus. I heard something yesterday that I think illustrates this pretty well. I got this from, some of you may know, the great apostles of Car Talk, Tom and Ray Magliozzi. Click and clack. That's right. The Tappet brothers. And this was sent into them. This was a letter sent into them from David Leventhal from SMU. It's a college somewhere. I don't know which college that is, Southwest Missouri University or Southern Methodist or something. It's an SMU. And he's a creative writing professor. Or this was from Professor Miller's creative writing class. And it says, there was an in-class assignment for Wednesday, and this is the assignment. Today we will experiment with a new form called tandem story. The process is simple. Each person will pair off with the person sitting to his or her immediate right. And actually that would take a little time because if everybody paired off with the person to their right, it wouldn't quite work out. It's kind of like that old pastoral joke where they say, stand up, turn around, and shake the hand of the person behind you. And if everybody does that, you're going to turn around and the person's going to have their back to you, right? So evidently they figured it out. It says one of you will then write the first paragraph of a short story. And the partner will read the first paragraph and then add another paragraph to the story. And the first person will then add a third paragraph and so on back and forth. Remember to reread what has been written each time in order to keep the story coherent. And the story is over when both agree that a conclusion has been reached. Right? Okay, so first of all, and this was from two people, Rebecca and Gary. And Rebecca went first. And this is how she began the story. At first, Lori couldn't decide which kind of tea she wanted. The chamomile, which used to be her favorite for lazy evenings at home, now reminded her too much of Carl, who once said in happier times that he liked chamomile. But she felt she must now at all costs keep her mind off of Carl. His possessiveness was suffocating, and if she thought about him too much, her asthma started acting up again. So chamomile was out of the question. Then she handed it to Gary. Meanwhile, Advanced Sergeant Carl Harris, leader of the attack squadron now in orbit over Skylon 4, had more important things to think about than the neuroses of an airheaded asthmatic bimbo named Lori. Sergeant Harris, to Geostation 17, he said into his transgalactic communicator. Polar orbit established. No sign of resistance so far. But before he could sign off, a bluish particle beam flashed out of nowhere and blasted a hole through his ship's cargo bay. The jolt from the direct hit sent him flying out of his seat and across the cockpit. Now it's Rebecca's turn. He bumped his head and died almost immediately. But not before he felt one last pang of regret for psychically brutalizing the one woman who had ever had feelings for him. Soon afterwards, Earth stopped its pointless hostilities toward the peaceful farmers of Skylon 4. Next, it's Gary's turn. Congress passes law permanently abolishing war and space travel. Lori read in her newspaper one morning. The news simultaneously excited her and bored her, and she stared out the window dreaming of her youth, when the days had passed unhurriedly and carefree, when no newspapers to read, no television to distract her from the sense of innocent wonder at all the beautiful things around her. Why must one lose one's innocence to become a woman, she pondered wistfully. Now it's Gary's turn. Little did she know, but she had less than 10 seconds to live. Thousands of miles above the city, the Andurian mothership launched the first of its lithium fusion missiles. The dim-witted, wimpy peaceniks who pushed the unilateral aerospace disarmament treaty through Congress had left Earth a defenseless target for the hostile alien empires who were determined to destroy the human race. Within 2 hours after passage of the treaty, the Andurian ships were on course for Earth, carrying enough firepower to pulverize the entire planet. With no one to stop them, they swiftly initiated their diabolical plan. The lithium fusion missile entered the atmosphere unimpeded. The president, in his top-secret mobile submarine headquarters on the ocean floor of the coast of Guam, felt the inconceivably massive explosion which vaporized Lori and the 85 million other Americans. The president slammed his fist on the conference table. We can't allow this. I'm going to veto that treaty. Let's blow him out of the sky. There were a few more paragraphs after this that basically had to do with some direct responses back and forth between Rebecca and Gary that were rather colorful, I'll say, and much too colorful for this. But you get the idea. That's a lighthearted way of thinking about how different our flesh and spirit are in what their desires are, and where they would lead us if we were to fully walk in the flesh or fully walk in the spirit. But instead, we are as if we have yoked our flesh and our spirit together, and now they can only go one direction at any one time. And the question is, which is stronger, the flesh or the spirit? Paul says, hey, don't be an idiot. What you sow, you're going to reap. If you sow to the flesh, well, you're going to reap the corruption that the flesh will lead you to. But if you sow to the Spirit, you will reap everlasting life. That's just the way it is. And in our prayer life, sometimes, we are torn this way and that way in how to pray and why should I pray? And should I pray for me, or I'll only pray for others? I've heard some say. Both of those are actually wrong. 1 Timothy 2:1 says this, another thought before we get to the psalm. Paul says, therefore I exhort, first of all, that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks be made for all men. Those are all types of prayers. supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks. You see, not all prayers are the same. Sometimes, like this morning, as we considered the cross of Calvary, and with no one but the Holy Spirit leading us, we began to thank God for what He had done at the cross, didn't we? That was just a rising up from our spirits of thanksgiving to God for what He has done in our lives. Ephesians 6:18 says this, praying always with all prayer. Pray with all prayer. Every kind of prayer you can think of, pray it. Praying with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit. Now this morning we're going to talk about supplication. Supplication is bringing a petition before the Lord. Not talking about going around and getting 17 people to sign on with you to give it to the Lord and say, hey, I got 17 people to sign my petition to say you need to do this for me. No. It's about us bringing our needs before the Lord, our petitions before Him. And we're going to look at Psalm 86, and we're going to look at the 5 reasons to pray as David, in this section of the Psalms, talks about prayer and is actually not instructing us about prayer directly, but he is speaking to the Lord. And there are 5 examples here, and we're going to take a look at them. 3 things in each of the 5 examples. If you're a math major, that means that's 15 things. The petition, the reason for praying, and the reason for praying to God. And you'll understand what I mean as we look at this first one. So if you've made your way to Psalm 86, we'll take a look at the first 5 verses. David says this, bow down your ear, O Lord, hear me, for I am poor and needy. Preserve my life, for I am holy. You are my God. Save your servant who trusts in you. Be merciful to me, O Lord, for I cry to you all day long. Rejoice the soul of your servant, for to you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. For you, Lord, are good and ready to forgive, abundant in mercy to all those who call upon you. What's the first reason to pray? Because God is good. You see, as we look at these, we're going to look at the petition. What did David pray for? What was he asking for? Well, if you look through this, he asked the Lord to hear him, preserve him, save him, be merciful to him, and make him happy. Rejoice my soul. That's what he's praying. I've prayed that a couple of times. Lord, hear me, preserve me, save me, be merciful to me, rejoice my soul, make me happy, Lord. I want to be happy.